Welcome back to AI for the Humanities. I'm Meghan McInnis-Domínguez, Associate Professor of Spanish at the University of Delaware. This channel explores how generative AI intersects with humanities education, examining both opportunities and challenges that these tools present for teaching and research. Today, we're sharing a roundtable discussion filmed at the end of our spring semester. Now that I posted the first videos from our student interns, I wanted to bring you this conversation where they reflect on their semester-long exploration of AI tools. These students spent months working hands-on with various AI platforms, creating the videos you've seen on the channel, and wrestling with practical questions about implementation, limitations, and ethics. In this follow-up to our initial roundtable, they discuss what they actually learned, both about the technology and about their own assumptions. What's valuable here isn't just their technical observations, but their honest assessment of where these tools succeed, where they fall short, and what that means for humanities work going forward.
Well, hello and welcome to another episode of AI for the Humanities. I'm Meghan McInnis-Domínguez. I'm Associate Professor of Spanish at the University of Delaware, and these are my interns that have been working with me this semester on various AI tools. They've produced 2 videos, and they're going to have a guidebook entry that we'll make available for professors and students in the humanities. And I'd like to think they've learned a lot and they'd have a lot to share with us today as we have a final reflection on all that has transpired this semester. So I guess what I would like to do is ask each of you if you could remind us what tool you studied and maybe a takeaway, that something that you've learned about this tool, about maybe its capabilities and or its limitations. And if we don't answer it all right now, we'll come back to this and many other questions that we'll talk about. But who'd like to get us started? Don't all jump in at one time. Grace.
Yeah, so I worked on Midjourney mainly, and some things I learned about it is that it really is limited in the types of styles of art it can produce. It's an image generator, and it just sticks to one kind of style, and it's very hard to get it to do a unique style or like a very specific style. You really have to word your prompt very carefully. And even then, it produces something that's just like everything else you've seen from it before. So you can use editing tools then to like customize it and make it more unique. But other than that, it's very limited in uniqueness.
Interesting. Yeah, I use Midjourney to for create the video or image creation, and it's true. If you train it and it develops an idea of what it thinks your style is, and so then the output is going to be similar for the images you request. But I guess the way to get around that is to edit further prompting. But even then, it's true, it's a limitation. I've noticed as well. Anyone else? Riley.
Sure. So the AI tool, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. The AI tool that I spent time this semester working with is Claude, which is developed by Anthropic. And Claude is a pretty run-of-the-mill text-based AI tool. Um, I would say that compared to other front runners like ChatGPT, it doesn't have quite the same functionality with images or with image production because it is pretty text-based, but Anthropic likes to market it with those text-based capabilities and with coding as well. So I found a lot of unique capabilities out of document processing, text processing, some coding, even though I'm not really that knowledgeable about it. And yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. So in the news lately, there've been a lot of advances in OpenAI and Gemini have come out with new models, and Meta's come out with a new model. Claude had an update, but it should be coming out with something new soon. So that's always how this works. One comes out with one, and then a day later you have another model that has an update. So that's one thing I bet you've all seen, that AI moves at the speed of light. It just goes so fast. And when you learn one model, um, just behind it, you'll find another. So it's when doing this work, I bet that was something that was interesting, but also a potentially complicating factor to learning AI. And it's something that keeps a lot of that. It's a reason why a lot of people are afraid of AI, because it does move quickly. But once you start to mess around with one tool, even with changes, it's not like everything is changed from one model to the next. There's still some continuity. So the more you play with it, the better you understand it, and you prompt better and have better results. Who would like to speak next? Elise.
Hi, my AI tool is Sonu, which is basically just a music generator tool. It's a little bit different than the previous ones previously mentioned. It actually had like a really recent update that dropped like the beginning of May that like I'm still trying to explore. It seems like it just kind of added more like genres and just a overall larger database. Um, and so far, I've really enjoyed working with it. Like I've learned a lot more about it because that's my first time ever like interacting with AI tool that specifically dealt with music. And then even during my research, being able to find like more things in regards to like those type of tools and how it's impacting the music industry and like how it's like literally changing before our eyes, like just constant updates onto like how it's impacting artists up and coming now, and even like veteran artists as well.
Right. It's true. Like with art, with image generation, like Grace has experienced with Midjourney, there's artists, there's obviously issues of copyright and copyright infringement and usage rights and things like this. But also there are some artists that are very much against it, which is understandable. And there are others that are actually using it to create new music or new art of a different type, really. It's I guess AI art and images and things are really um, are in a category of their own, that I guess there are debates whether or not they should be recognized if AI is used. You mentioned that it's been used. There's so many things, so many things we could talk about just with creative production and AI. Who else would like to speak? Logan.
So my AI tool is Grok, which is made by Elon Musk and his company XAI. Initially, when I first started using Grok, I thought it was just some kind of extension of Twitter because it's in Twitter. I thought it was just, oh, it's just AI into Twitter. But then as I started researching it, it became more widely accessible. It has its own app, its own website, all kinds of stuff. And I thought it'd just be like, oh, type in a prompt, ask it a question, like simple AI stuff. But over time, in my journals that I submitted, more and more features came out over time, which is pretty cool. One of my favorite ones being Grok personas. So that is, long story short, is you can select from like 10 or 11 personas. So there's one that's like a storyteller, trivia, a doctor, a therapist. So if you let's say I press the therapist persona, if I was like, hey Grok, I'm really upset, school's stressing me out, what do I do? It'll give me therapist-esque advice and verbiage, and also it talks to you too, like you can hear it talk. So I feel like over time it definitely grew into something bigger than just another AI tool. It does a whole bunch of things, image generation, all kinds of stuff. I mainly use it. I'm in French 2 right now. It's pretty hard. Sometimes I'm like, hey, like I'm not quite understanding these certain concepts. Just give me an example, give me a little rundown, help me out. And like it'll generate me some prompts based on what I provide it. And it's worked pretty good so far. I learned a lot more using Grok than before without using it. And I feel as if the more things they add on, the more it affects humanities directly. Like I mentioned, the therapist persona, the doctor persona. If you're instead going to AI to get some kind of therapeutic advice or even like a doctoral diagnosis, I doubt that's someone's first priority to go to for advice, but like eventually when AI becomes more reliable, that could, in theory, take away money and jobs from those who are actually working in those fields. So I feel as if we're getting to a point where we're creeping up closer and closer to AI getting to that next level of being really powerful, kind of scary, honestly. But I think we should definitely watch out for how far AI can develop, and we should definitely put some limits to make sure it doesn't take over the human race. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely an issue that a lot of people are talking about. So it's true. I'll be the first to admit that AI is going to take away jobs from humans. It will. It will. But then there will be new types of jobs created for humans to work with AI to guide AI too. So it's going to be a mix. But true. Another issue is, you know, reliability will improve too. So always with AI, with anything you find on the internet, you have to be careful just because you don't know if it's going to lead you astray or it's probably wrong information. But as it gets better, it could be a tool that I know. I have a friend who's a doctor who has been using AI, developing its own tool to help with diagnoses of lung patient issues, and he's finding it's actually very helpful to get information out to his patients in a quick way, while still having personal contact with them as well. So it's interesting. It's really interesting. Does anybody else want to talk about what they've been exploring? Elizabeth, hi.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth, and I've been looking at ChatGPT over the course of this semester, and there are constantly new things coming out with ChatGPT, constantly more and more to keep up with. I think over the course of this semester, what surprised me most generally about using ChatGPT was the extremes, the small hallucinations despite very large capabilities, the being able to synthesize and more or less accurately extract information from large PDFs. Meanwhile, asking it to generate an image with any sort of text in it, and it will almost every time misspell the text or just spit out some gibberish. And I have the $20 subscription version. I have been looking at it in education specifically, and I've found a lot of interesting information there. Teachers using it more often than students, K to 12. I myself have found that it's not great for realistic lesson plans, although it does have some great ideas about activities. I have been using it in my current job. I'm substituting for a Spanish teacher, and I have been using it to help me to create skits with comprehensible input for my students. So telling it my students' level in Spanish, according to frameworks that are nationally recognized, like Actual, for example, and it can help me build a skit in Spanish that they're more likely to understand. That's been a use that I have loved about it. I lately have been looking a lot more about the ethics of ChatGPT for children, thinking about children K to 12. And I have found some very scary things about how it can make grooming, for instance, more easy, or the huge advantage is for making text more comprehensible for kids and tell me something in a way that a 5-year-old would explain. That same ability can be harnessed for if someone were to go to it and ask it to help them imitate a child to get something from a child. So I agree that ethical components are very important, and we're kind of in this race right now between the developing technology and trying to effectively develop and implement curricula that will teach people in general, but especially children, about their use and what they are and what they aren't and how to protect themselves. So, yeah, it's been a long semester, a great semester, and I feel like I've learned a lot through examining those issues with ChatGPT.
It's fascinating, and it is, there's so much potential, but then there's so much risk too,
Yeah.
especially they're talking about children, and there's some uses like you have Khan Academy that have developed like a tutorial system with the Conmigo, and how it can be a really useful tool to help kids understand materials or concepts in greater detail. And but this idea of grooming, I hadn't even considered that, and that's a real worry that we have to discuss. So like all of these things have to be considered. AI is not perfect, and it's good that we're having these talks, and that you, especially as a teacher educator, a current educator, will be able to bring your perspective to the table. Anybody else want to talk about what they've been doing and they've learned this semester? Can't see everybody. So, okay, we can put out another question. So, how did your general understanding of AI change over the semester? Anyone can jump in here. What you thought AI was and what you think it is now. Is it the same? Is it different? Grace.
I mean, I thought, coming from a computer science background, I really viewed AI as just data training. And I viewed it from like a very technical perspective, but I didn't really understand all the capabilities that AI has. And it's insane. It wowed me when I discovered all these things. But it's also interesting to learn, like, it's quite limited, especially Midjourney, it's quite limited. And you constantly have to keep feeding it new data to keep up with all that's coming out in the world. But at the same time, with like the ChatGPT, the newer versions of ChatGPT and deep dive ChatGPT, it's constantly improving. And it's something that I couldn't keep up with before now.
No, it is constantly, yeah, ChatGPT and Gemini are really competing with having those, I guess, the powerful models, and yeah, with the deep research function and ChatGPT, the O3, the advanced reasoning models, and just then Gemini with the image video production, the capabilities that are surpass others. There's so much happening, and there's so many uses that we hadn't even thought that we could use these things for. Yeah, I personally do use AI every day. I do it to start research projects sometimes. It's actually very useful in narrowing down potential sources. It's not perfect, that's for sure. But it has all of these use cases that can make work, I guess, quicker, but also more efficient. Uh, Definitely increases productivity, I think, if used properly. But we have that other side of potentially losing our critical perspective. If we rely too heavily on AI, then are we developing our own thoughts, our own perspectives? And I think, that's the fine line where there has to be a human in the loop. So this is, a very important thing for students, especially to know when using AI, that is, yes, these tools are great, but they can't do all the work for you. Because then, where are you needed in a future future job? Like, what part would you play? So you don't want to get lost. But does anybody else have a new understanding of AI? Riley?
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in and kind of build off of what you just said about the place of AI in terms of critical thinking and how much work is done by a professional versus by the tool. Just because in the research that I've done with Claude, I've found that Anthropic is a pretty transparent company about what their tool is capable of, and they have lots of disclaimers all throughout the sign up process, all throughout when you actually use the tool. It'll say, this is experimental technology. This AI can make mistakes. Please double check important information that you don't want to be wrong about. So when I think about the implementation of AI, especially in an educational setting, just people's willingness to turn to it as a credible, verified source of information, or for sometimes work, is an ethical problem that I've seen as alarming. And in the case of K-12 education, like Elizabeth was talking about, it's, yes, a race to see if the regulations and the standards that educators have can keep up with the development of that technology. Just because there are things that like there is a risk to lose some of the like the dirtier work and the skills that we may be able to sacrifice because of that expanded technology, but that aren't worth just giving up entirely.
Mhm. Oh, very true. Does anybody else want to chime in? How about what was the most surprising or unexpected thing you discovered while working with your tool? Good or bad? Asia.
Yeah, so I have Microsoft Copilot. Before this course, I did not know what Microsoft Copilot was. So what I found surprising was that it's heavily used in like workspaces and school. Some universities promote it and they actually have like a lot of guidebooks on how to properly use Microsoft Copilot. If you go to like their library website and you just type in Microsoft Copilot, they'll tell you how to properly use it. So I thought that was very interesting versus ChatGPT. If you go on like websites like that, because that's the most commonly used, at least I use it a lot before Microsoft Copilot, and other students did before other AI devices came out. You really don't see too much of how to use it, but Microsoft Copilot is very, I would say, innovative, not only within like academics, but globally as well. You can use it for different things. So I thought that was very interesting.
Right, it's integrated into, so being Microsoft, most companies and universities and so on have institutional licenses. So to integrate the Copilot into the Microsoft 365 micro system, it can work with the data that you have, and it can be very useful and beneficial in that way. And that's why the University of Delaware has a license with Copilot, because we already have Microsoft, and also with Gemini because we have a license with Google. So that's interesting. Not to say that things like there are a lot of these models also have edu licenses available. Like ChatGPT has an edu license available, um, and you know it's maybe not quite as used as say the Copilot model though. Elizabeth.
So I touched on this a little bit before. I think what surprised me most with ChatGPT was how it can make such simple mistakes. I mean, the hallucinations with images were expected. I had heard about that before, totally expected it, and I expected it to make mistakes with nuances of meaning, combing through large things. But there were a couple of instances where I felt that with a prompt I was so straightforward, and then still the information coming back was so clearly inaccurate. For example, I have used it to help me to find research studies. Um, Instead of, going through JSTOR, combing through everything with the keywords and going through a bunch of different journals to find information, seeing if it can find me something accurate that is making the point that I am wanting to make. And I remember asking it to find me studies in the last 10 years. And I kept saying the last 10 years, the last 10 years. And it kept coming up with, here's a study from 2009, here's a study from 2008. And I felt like I was being so clear, but still it wasn't coming across. And I don't know a lot about computers, right? I don't come from that background. So I would be very interested to know, like, in the process of creating it more, knowing more about coding, for example, and how these tools are built and how that happens, how very small things can slip through the cracks, even when you're being very straightforward and detailed.
That's a good question. Grace, do you know the answer to that? You're our comp sci person.
Can you reiterate the question, please?
Yeah, it's just asking why. So Elizabeth was looking for articles that were written in the past 10 years, but was getting constantly articles from earlier than that, even though she kept
Yeah.
refining the prompt, but it kept talking about these earlier studies. Just interesting I mean, why that might be happening.
Yeah, it's probably that the data that they're training the models on or that they're feeding into them are like outdated. Like they haven't updated that just yet. So a lot of the times when you're looking for articles in a certain time frame, it it's outdated. So it just doesn't, there's like a certain year where it just stops and it can't go past that.
Yeah, that's true, the cutoff date. So it's interesting. It's interesting and how it hallucinates and says, well, I can't really get you what you want, but here's what I have. But it doesn't always tell you that that's what it's doing. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they say, I'm sorry, I can't help you with that. But, it's interesting. Any other surprising discoveries anybody had? Sarveen?
So the AI tool that I was like experimenting with this whole semester was Flux, which is a AI image generator. And I don't know if I'd call this like unexpected, but this was just kind of interesting to me that like surprised me in a way. It was the way that like AI interprets human like concepts and emotions, because there was a point in like my research this semester that I was like giving Flux like very broad like stuff that like humans interact with. Like I would give it like empathy or like freedom or love, and to see like how AI like interprets it. And I didn't have like a, what's it called? Like image in my head. Like I didn't know what I was expecting, but like every time like Flux would give me an image, like it would be like pretty on brand. Like I would look at that image and be like, oh, like I could see that being empathy. I could see that being. So I just found that like kind of surprising in a way, that like to see how this computer like thinks and like sees stuff that like humans deal with.
How it can emulate human emotion. And it's really interesting because a lot of the models are being trained to be like, so that was the thing, ChatGPT had an update from 4.0 to 4.5, and it was considered to be a more empathetic model that could responded with more compassion, or would change its output depending on its perceived um, perception of the user's emotions at the time. And now people hate it because they say it's too touchy-feely, they don't like it. And it's really funny that, it's going in that direction, but then there was also resistance to that it is very interesting, but that seems to be, and you hear that in the voice function, the models that have voice, and how they react if you speak with them, if they can imitate your tone or whatnot. But yeah, it's very interesting. Anything else? Surprising variety? Yeah, Elise.
I know you had mentioned before, like with the other AI tools, how like they constantly have like new versions coming out, but I didn't think like my AI tool, with it being like a little different, would have so many versions. But like doing my research on it, I found out like it started like officially in 2023, and it's already on like version 4.5 that dropped early this month, I think I mentioned. And I was just like, I didn't think it would like update itself so frequently, especially with it like being only, I guess, 2 years old, if that. I don't even think it's 2 years old now. Um, that was just surprising to learn about AI tools in general. Because I feel like my experience is more so like apps and stuff, like social media apps that like, maybe update every 1 to 2 years, because it's just like a full overhaul. But it seems like every time they have some minute change, they just like drop a new version, which is debatable whether that's good or bad. And one other surprising thing I found with my tool was like how many cosigns of like bigger name artists there were. Because I just, I guess, had the impression that like a lot of artists would be kind of against it, but like they have some really big names attached to it, like either doing some type of brand deal or just sorry, yeah, like just doing some type of brand deal with the AI tool. So that was also really surprising.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. As time is passing, I feel like there are more people that are kind of realizing that, so this AI thing, I don't know if it's just going to disappear. So some people are seeing that this is, that being the case, that maybe a way to reach different audiences is through these tools, or in different types of collaborations is interesting. I mean, it'll be interesting to see. It's moving so quickly, these developments, and regulation has slowed. So just who knows what's going to be happening. So I guess we can talk a little bit about um, what do you think that the humanities can contribute to AI, or AI to the humanities? So remember, the humanities are all the fields that you guys were studying as minors or majors, in languages and history and music and in just so many different fields that brought you here. Um, how do you think the humanities fits in with AI, or AI with the humanities? This is a tough question. Grace.
I was waiting for this question. So I think a lot of the times when AI has like the knowledge base there, I mean, it knows more than we do as individuals. Even for like um, multiple people as a whole, it knows more than us. So it really depends on how we use it. And a lot of the humanities is creating or discovering new perspectives on things or thinking of things we've never thought before. Um, and that's not entirely, uh, that requires more than just knowledge. It requires creativity and human thought, um, especially with art, like we see in Midjourney or any generative image AI, that a lot of the art is generic, it's the same, or it lacks certain emotion or mistakes even. Like most of art is mistakes, mistakes that look good. So, and there's been a lot of art pieces created with AI that are just beautiful, but AI was used as a tool in those instances. Um, so it really becomes a beautiful thing when we work in tandem with AI, especially in the humanities. I think it just elevates human creativity to another level, um, and just helps us like fuel the rocket to go higher in a way.
Yeah, well, that's great. I really appreciate that comment. I mean, obviously, it, it together they can really do quite a lot, and it can be mutually beneficial. But especially, I think the humanities have a big role to play here with development of AI in the future, and should be have a seat at the table. Hold on 1 second. We're back. So now, does anybody else have any thoughts about the humanities and AI from what they've learned? Yeah.
Um, I have a lot of strong opinions about the intersection of AI with the humanities and how, while I think that the humanities can play a big role in AI, that it's just it hasn't really sit right with me this semester. But just to be on like a more positive, like go AI note, um, I think that um I think that AI technologies, generative AI, large language models can really help make the humanities more accessible to certain people. Um, just as an example, I'm studying Spanish here, and one thing that AI has really helped me with is with my compositions. Um, I've been using AI in my Spanish classes since last this past fall semester. Then I never really used AI in classes, but I've, written compositions for class, whether it, narrative storytelling or poetry and things like that. But AI has really given me more confidence in my compositions, and I don't use it super often. I try to be very mindful with using AI and minimize the amount of time that I do use it. But mostly for checking my grammar and phrases and words that I use, because I'm not super honed in on that. That's still one thing I'm learning about Spanish and the language, that while something may be correct, it just might not sound as good in another language. And so AI has been really helpful with that. A lot of times I'll type in a composition into the chat box and then it will send me back a revised version with, pointing out, okay, here's an error. This is an incorrect conjugation, or this is the wrong tense, or oh, this is correct, but it just sounds a little bit weird and this word might be better. And so I feel like AI can help people have more access to different humanity elements such as language learning, but that's been my personal experience with it. And that's what I'm kind of grateful for, that it has been very helpful and given me more confidence in the compositions that I've written, even if it's just a text message. I've done that once or twice where I've typed in a text message that I wanted to send to a family member or to a loved one. I'm like, I just want to make sure this sounds right and that it makes it's sounding fine.
It's like we're losing you there, but I got the gist of what you were saying, and I think that so it's interesting where AI can be helpful or harmful in the writing process, depending on how it's used. But like for in my classes, for example, I do ask students to put their papers through an AI grammar check because it will give them far more detailed advice about how to correct grammar issues in their papers than I could. And then it gives me more bandwidth to be able to give more critical comments, about the structure and the content and things like that. So it can be very useful that way. And I think it, like, as you've been using it, not to have it do the work for you, but as a way to improve and also learn something in the process, that's actually very valuable, I think, and and also give you more confidence, and then you're learning something from that process. And I think Elizabeth, our teacher here, has some comments she'd like to share.
Yeah. I think in education, the uses that I've experienced with ChatGPT, it's been a very helpful tool without robbing that human aspect. Like it's my lessons that are being planned, but maybe if I'm stumped, I ask it for an idea on an activity, and maybe that idea that it gives me is awful and I hate it, but it reminds me of something that would work, and that's happened to me a few times. I also think that in the humanities, significantly in education, there is a very large creativity burden put on professionals in a certain amount of time that you go to work. And it's almost become normalized, these blurred boundaries between work life and home life, where you are expected to plan outside of your normal hours. You are expected to sacrifice personal time for that. And I think that AI can do a good job in helping us to ease that burden a little bit, automatizing the things that would take me forever to compile, like a list of the 150 most used adjectives in English or in Spanish for students, something like that, equivalent to a Google search that would be more organized when using an AI tool, helping us to organize our own thoughts, making charts instead of going on Excel. And it takes like me, I hate Excel so much because I'm not fluent in it and it'll take me forever to make a spreadsheet. Just automatizing the things that could help take a little bit of a burden off of our shoulders in that way. I think I've experienced it as a partnership throughout the semester in that way with my planning, and I hope that other educators do as well.
I agree 100%. It's I use ChatGPT predominantly and Gemini as collaborators when coming up with ideas. Because sometimes the ideas that comes up with are just really they're very innovative and just interesting. And sometimes they're very bad, but it's a collaboration. It's a dialogue, it's a conversation. And that's how these tools should be used. It's not just put in a prompt and then have it spit something out and then, oh, that's good or that's bad and blah, whatever. No, it's an iterative process where you work with it and you come up with ideas together and you have a better result that way. And it gets easier the more you use it too. You become better at prompting and then it speeds things up. But I could say this, it does when you learn how to use these tools, they make you more productive. They just do. You can get a lot more done. And then also doing busy work like sending emails. I also do that. I use it. I'm like, oh, I'm writing my friend from Spain on this, just make, here's what I have, make it sound better. Or, oh, going to speak to somebody from Argentina. So it helps me, target the language to the person with whom I'm speaking in the local, I guess, manner of speaking, which is kind of nice, things like that just that's a personal touch using something very impersonal. So, does anybody else have any more comments about the humanities and AI before we move on? These are all great, great thoughts. So ethics. What are your thoughts about ethics and AI, maybe from the beginning of the semester until now? So we've kind of touched on this a little bit, but this is very, very important. So I want to make sure we get to it. Riley.
I have had a lot to say about ethics in the implementation of AI from the beginning
Looks like we're losing you.
of the semester and then throughout the research process. I've spoken a little bit before and in my first video about how I believe that one of the dangers of AI being so powerful is that in educational contexts, they are too accessible. They're, as we've discussed, as many different people have seen in their research of it, and then as I've seen in my research, there are ways that we can consider ethical or more complementary ways to use AI to help you plan a lesson plan better or to help you review a paper for grammar. But the way that it has struck me has been that the plain fact of the matter is that it is generative, and there's no AI company that is slapping a rule on their chatbot that says you can't write a 5-paragraph essay. So even though some tools like Gemini, I know do have educational modes, or they do have like a version that they're making for educational enterprises, that anyone can make an account, anyone can pay for it. And I think that there is a really high risk there in terms of compromising the originality and the quality of the content that students can access, especially in like a younger setting, because like to me, the idea of children in schools using AI for learning purposes is also just not hitting the right way. I would support children, learning about critical thinking skills, learning about the world around them, the environment around them. And as powerful as it is, I see like cracks in the dam for how accessible it is and how much of a risk it is likely to pose to critical thinking and intellectualism. But that's my very like personal steaming hot 2 cents.
No, I mean, it's a very valid opinion and based on science and also just honestly what's been happening, people they've been using AI to do work for you. And at a young age, that could be extremely detrimental, especially. Amelia.
I was going to talk about the environmental concerns of using AI, but just to super quickly like piggyback of what Riley said, because I completely agree. We're thinking less. AI is generative, and in an educational sense, it is so easy to take a question on assignment, and plug it into a chat box and get the answer right then and there. I'm guilty of it. I know so many people, not just in my field, in universities everywhere, are guilty of it. Whether it's, in the case where, for me personally, I'm gonna be honest, I work to pay rent, and so I have less time than other students. And a lot of people do clubs and sports, and with time constraints, just like I feel like everyone nowadays, like in this, society, especially in the United States, we are not richer, but we are poorer in time. Everyone is more busy than ever. We all have less time. And so the convenience of generative AI is it's very appealing, and it's very tempting to put in assignments and just entire assignments and have it done for you there. And now you have more free time to go to work or go to a club or get a good night's sleep. And it can be a great tool for starting a research paper or for getting ideas for a project. But there are people that are using it for entire assignments. And it's very concerning, especially for students at a younger age. I'm glad that AI is being introduced, like for our age. I'm glad it was introduced to me while I was in college, because I cannot imagine a middle schooler, a high schooler even having access to generative AI and using it when their brains are still so young and they need to learn critical things, need, learn how to look at a question and stare at it and sit and really think about what the answer is, and use any other resource than just typing it into a chat box. And so it is very concerning how it's so accessible, and it is dangerous because, like, as a whole, like, we're thinking less. Like, this is my takeaway from it. I'm not going to go into the environmental stuff because I've been talking for so long, but that is just another concern of mine that I'm going to talk about in the next video that I'm going to do for the channel.
Oh, good. And I'll just add that, so I have a middle schooler and a high schooler, and they hate AI. They whenever I start talking about it, they're like, "Stop, mom, that's enough. We're tired of hearing about AI." They just are opposed to it. For artistic, they both sing and they play instruments, and for them it infringes on they see the negative that it has, the effects that it has in the art world, and also they don't want to, they perceive it, to them it's only cheating. There's no other, for them it's only cheating, there's no other possibility. I've tried to talk with them about it, like how it could be beneficial for other reasons, but no. And you know what, actually, I don't really mind if they have that perspective for now. There's always time for them to find these things later in life. Grace.
Yeah, I definitely agree with all of what Amelia was saying. I definitely wanted to emphasize on, it is so easy to fall into the trap of thing I really want to emphasize on when we talk about ethics and AI. Because there are ways to use AI without getting the answers first. I hope my viewers, and whoever reads my guidebook takes away that when we're looking at AI, we want to ask it questions that help us learn instead of do the learning for us. I know I personally, like, if I'm having trouble with a homework, I'll ask it, how specifically do I do this formula, or how do I explain this theory? But yeah, I think whenever we're using AI, we have to be very considerate and very mindful of what we're inputting into that chat box and what kind of prompts we're using.
A good point. It is. Any other comments? Does anybody else want to talk about the environmental aspect that's really important as well? That obviously this is a huge question, that these models use a lot of energy, use a lot of water, and it has negative consequences to our planet, right? And we're only going to need more and more of these resources. So, Elizabeth.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely did not know a lot about that piece before the start of the semester and doing my research. And I found a data report that shared that ChatGPT, some of its data centers are using more electricity than entire countries put next to them, which just shocked me to my core. Um, and it's scarier to think about, myself as a college now graduate student learning that versus trying to get that information across to other people who wouldn't have the privilege of accessing higher education, wouldn't have the privilege of maybe even accessing what we take for granted today as regular technology. And that leads me into another ethical concern that I have for students in AI that has not been mentioned already is increasing the achievement gap, because you think about already students who have access to more technology have so much of an advantage over their counterparts. You think about kids whose parents can afford to get them a Princeton review packet or Princeton review tutor for the SAT, things like that. Now AI, they could just have a couple of clicks and be able to get a homework assignment done that another kid might spend 3 hours on and has no adult at home who's available to help them. And it's concerning to think about. And I really do think we are in a race to be able to get information across to people faster, or trying to catch up to the pace that these things are being developed. And I think that a lot of the issues that we've been talking about go hand in hand. It is incredibly helpful and could be incredibly destructive as well.
That's so true. With parity, it's just it's regarding technology and education. It's such an issue. And when during COVID, one of the things that happened is that Chromebooks were available to kids, and so now kids, all students have Chromebooks, and so that kind of brought students to the same level with that level of technology. So one has to wonder if, well, I know that their education in AI, that's the topic right now that is being discussed by the administration. And there's definitely a push for AI in education starting in grade schools. So if that's the case, does that going to mean that they're going to have resources for all children to be able to use these tools? And then, it's quite it's a bag of worms, but yes, Elizabeth.
I want to add to that too, you made me think of it when you said that. As part of my second video, I examined a couple of um, curricula online that are available right now, free to educators to help educate children. And I looked through them and I thought the lessons were great. But it's also a sustainability issue time-wise. For example, I was reading an educational report from 2022. 3 hours a week is what most schools currently spend, public schools, on social studies, and 3 hours a week on science. And if we can barely fit those in, and we can barely fit related arts in, it's going to be a real challenge to get AI education in. It's going to be a real challenge to get education into adults as well, who might not think they need it, or are working two jobs to keep the lights on, or are just very drained in general. It's definitely going to be a challenge.
So true. Oh my goodness. Something will have to go. And that's really sad because what we have is just, especially the arts, and that's what we don't want to sacrifice, but they often are what is sacrificed first. But, well, we're running low on time. There's so much to talk about. I wish I could have you guys here for another hour. But so I guess now it's just, is there anything that we haven't said that you think is really worth mentioning about AI, about your experience, or about, like, if you were to talk to a future student who's doing an internship for AI for the humanities, something you might tell them? Grace.
I think advice for just everybody and people going into this internship as well is to not be scared of AI, because I talk to so many people, and I was this person who is hesitant to use AI or scared to use AI because they don't really understand it or they're worried about the ethics of it. But definitely familiarize yourself with that and get comfortable with it. And from there, you can educate yourself and help create a more positive connotation on AI.
Well said. Anybody else? Are you tired? You ready to study for exams and write your own final papers? Well, it's been a real joy having you guys in class this semester, and I have learned so much from you. Really, this has been fantastic. I look forward to, I'm still putting up first videos. I'll be putting up second videos very soon, and then we have the guidebook. So really, thank you so much for your very, very thoughtful input.
This conversation has been both humbling and inspiring. Watching our interns navigate the complexities of AI, celebrating its potential while remaining clear-eyed about its limitations, gives me tremendous hope for the future of humanities education. What strikes me most is how naturally they've embodied the core principles that we've been advocating, using AI as a collaborative tool rather than a replacement for critical thinking, maintaining transparency about their processes, and always centering human values in their work. They've shown that technical proficiency and humanistic wisdom aren't opposing forces. They're complementary strengths that our students can and must develop together. Their work this semester demonstrates that the humanities aren't being displaced by artificial intelligence. Instead, humanistic perspectives are becoming more essential as we navigate questions of bias, authenticity, creativity, and the very nature of knowledge itself. As we move forward, I'm confident that these students will carry these critical capabilities into whatever fields they enter, helping ensure that as AI becomes more prevalent, it remains grounded in the values of inquiry, empathy, and ethical reasoning that define humanistic scholarship at its best. I've started posting their second videos and will continue to do so in the coming weeks, so you'll be able to see more of their work and how their thinking evolved throughout the semester. Thank you for joining us in this journey. If you found value in this discussion, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with others who are grappling with similar questions. Your engagement helps us build a community of thoughtful practitioners working to shape a more humane and just technological future. Until next time, keep questioning, keep creating, and keep demonstrating why the humanities matter more than ever in our AI-enhanced world.
We came with questions, left with more, but diving deep through AI's door. Claude and ChatGPT became our guides as we learned to see both benefits and divides. Every prompt became a lesson learned. Every output bridge is burned and earned. Between the human heart and silicon mind, we discovered truth we didn't expect to find. What we learn goes deeper than the tools, beyond the algorithms and technical rules. Critical thinking is our strongest defense. When future and tradition make their confluence, we carry forward more than code and chat. We carry wisdom, and we're proud of that. Surprised by bias hiding in plain sight, amazed by creativity sparked overnight. The ethics kept us grounded when we soared, while innovation opened every door. From medieval text to modern verse, AI helped us rehearse and reimburse the debt we owe to human curiosity, while maintaining our interpretive authority. What we learn goes deeper than the tools, beyond the algorithms and technical rules. Critical thinking is our strongest defense. When future and tradition make their confluence, we carry forward more than code and chat. We carry wisdom, and we're proud of that. The humanities aren't fading away. They're lighting the path for a brighter day. When machines can think but cannot feel, we're the ones who keep compassion real. Technology needs a humanistic heart. That's where our contributions start. Not replacement, but collaboration. mission, building bridges across the digital nation. Find we learn goes deeper than the tools, beyond the algorithm, BEMS and echo rules. Critical thinking is our strongest defense. When future and tradition make their confluence, we carry forward more than code and chat. We carry wisdom, and we're proud of that. We carry wisdom, and we're proud of that. So subscribe and join this conversation. Help us build a thoughtful AI nation. The future's ours to write and define, where human values and technology align.